Welcome to the Milk Bottle e-commerce show, brought to you by Milk Bottle Labs, one of the world's top-rated accredited Shopify experts. The Irish-based Milk Bottle Labs team upgrade, migrate, manage and advise some of the highest-performing Shopify stores worldwide. Founder Keith Matthews interviews merchants, developers, fellow agency owners and Shopify folk to share as many Shopify tips and tricks as possible. If you're planning on upgrading to Shopify 2.0 or migrating over to Shopify, reach out. Milk Bottle will help. Now, over to Keith.
Hey folks, welcome back. Today I am delighted to welcome Rich Matukaitis from the Rebuy Engine app, which is a Shopify app that the Milk Bottle Labs team have been installing in stores a lot lately. Rich is based in Toronto and he sits on the partner management team. Rich, I am delighted to finally talk to you. You are in Toronto, are you?
Toronto, Canada. Yes, it's a little bit cold over here now. The summer is definitely left, but yeah, I'm here in Toronto trying to stay warm.
Rich, I noticed I did a little bit of a bit of research on you, and you're ex Shopify. Were you based in Toronto when you were working for Shopify?
Yeah, so I've been in Toronto for about 13 years and I joined Shopify. So I'll tell you a little bit of a backstory. So I kind of stumbled into e-commerce and I feel like a lot of people that are in this industry kind of have a similar story. But I actually have been a hairdresser for 14 years and I started trying to lean into ways where I could automate my booking process and just kind of legitimize myself online. But I had no idea where to start. So I was part of a group on Facebook that was dedicated to entrepreneurs that were looking to either build, scale, or grow a business. And I came across this one fellow who was kind of evangelizing Shopify. And I was just very curious. So he kind of leaned into me a little bit with the questions that I had. And, he was like, have you considered Shopify? I had no idea what Shopify was. But needless to say, he kind of explained the process to me about how to go about getting a job there. And, rather than looking at the platform as a tool, I started leaning into, okay, well, maybe this would be something I should consider. And next thing you know, I went through the interview process. I started in a support role at Shopify. And over the span of about 4 years, I kind of climbed my way through that organization, learning from merchants, starting, in a support role, but then eventually climbing into Shopify Plus specific support. And when I left, it was on their sales team. So for me, I found this as an incredible tool to learn from merchants that were also thought leaders that took an idea and turned it into a business. And I was now at the helm of helping them, solve these problems that I also was trying to solve. So it was really kind of this kismet relationship with these merchants where, we're both kind of trying to accomplish the same thing, but I was the one that they were looking to for advice. So I will always credit Shopify because it was like the most intensive, like almost like a university course on business, e-com, branding, all of that.
Yeah, I've heard a few people say that, but in addition to that, though, these successful merchants were coming to you to fix their pain points. So you were probably learning actually more. It was kind of an escalated learning, wasn't it? Because over a period of time, you probably got to know the top 10 pain points when you're running an e-commerce store.
100%. I mean, people are coming to me with their problems, right? So it was a very quick crash course in like what not to do, learning from, growing pains and things like that. But, for me, I never really had the intention of kind of the path that I found myself in. But again, connecting with people, there was just this immediate, kind of passion for me about just helping people take an idea and turn it into something that they love. So it was a lot of pressure, but at the same time, I'm kind of getting people asking me questions about APIs. I'm like, what the hell is an API?
Yeah.
So kind of learning while they were learning as well. So it was a really cool process. And like I said, Shopify really did set me up for success to not necessarily need to know every answer to every question, but they provided us with the tools to be able to access the information. So after a while, when you get the same questions, you kind of start to pick up and retain this information. So, having been always working from home, I would be working at home with friends or whatever. After certain calls, these people would look at me and be like, where did you learn this?
Yeah.
How do you know this information? So it's been kind of a journey, but looking back, it's completely changed my life. So I'll be forever grateful for Shopify for sure.
Yeah, you made a point there about the amount of people that accidentally fall into e-commerce. They accidentally fall into e-commerce because they find Shopify. So your story is one I've heard before as well. Do you miss the hairdressing?
Well, I still do it on the side. I'm a little bit more specific about how I do it. And for me, leading the traditional salon structure was something I was always looking to do because I found that, this was the first thing that I really found a genuine passion in, but then I was kind of overlapping my passion with what was keeping my lights on, So I really kind of had to sacrifice a lot of the ways that I would prefer to go about things, or, the methods in which I would work, or the prices that I would charge. I had to compromise a little bit in order to, again, make the money and do all of that. And I think that's a story that a lot of brands kind of go through. It's like you really kind of have to choose either or at certain points in those growing pains. So I know I definitely still do hair, but I'm fortunate enough now to be able to do it in a capacity where it's now that it's back to the passion side of things and not necessarily sustenance,
So you're still, your toe is still in the water, but you probably get to pick the work you want and you probably enjoy it even more. Would that make sense?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, rather than feeling like a robot or just kind of like going through the motions, now I've got a handful of select clients that I work with, and I feel like I can be a lot more present, a lot more intentional. So it feels like a really great balance. Whereas before I felt like I was kind of getting lost in the business side of it rather than the passion side of it. So that was something that was very challenging at first, but now I'm able to kind of keep those things separate. And I absolutely love it still to this day.
Based on what you just said, doesn't it just prove that everybody has a backstory?
Working with merchants directly, again, you're chatting with people on the phone, and at points, I feel like the people that you interact with while you're going through those growing pains, it's not something that a lot of people can relate to. So, talking to your inner circle or your friends or whatever, they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear, but not necessarily what you need to hear. So being able to connect with people on that level was really special, because I feel like the way in which I was able to interact with them, there were people that were like, I'm ready to throw in the towel. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I've made a huge mistake. And I'm like, okay, pump the brakes. At the end of the day, your product or your brand or your service or whatever it is, that's unchanged. But I think when we get into the idea of turning something like that into a business, a lot of people are creatives first, or products, the product development first.
Yeah.
The business side of things that everybody has to go through and learn all of that. It's a really unique situation to be in. It's like, I know that I have a great idea or great product to offer to people, but now I've got to turn into this logistics and data, and it becomes much more than just the initial idea. And I think for me, it was really great to be able to ground people back and like, okay, relax. We're going to get through this. Let's start with step one and we'll go from there. So I felt really, really kind of, blessed to be able to interact with people at that point, because it's not easy starting a business, as I'm sure right?
Yeah. You made some interesting points there. One of them is the entrepreneurial journey is a lonely one. You mentioned there a bit data and, there's legals and then there's logistics, but Shopify makes a lot of that very, very easy, but it's still difficult. But the most interesting takeaway from your point there is most entrepreneurs are on their own. And when they ring Shopify, you were probably one of the only people that they were going to be talking to on that particular day.
Yeah. And what? My interaction with them could have been the difference between them continuing or giving up.
Yeah.
Very precarious position to be in, because I felt like, all right. And, my key to success in that role was being very transparent with them. I'm like, listen, I might not know the answer that you're looking for, but I'll make sure that I get in touch with the right person to get that information to you. But at no point was there any sense of, me knowing more than them. I think Shopify did a really great job at, staffing all of their support team with real people. I mean, I didn't realize the overlap in the sense that, like, as a hairdresser, I was branding, acquisition, retention, marketing, all of that, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to speak from my own experience. And I think that story kind of context really helped to get people to a point where they felt comfortable speaking to me and, allowing themselves to be a little bit more vulnerable and not kind of back up against the wall. So I don't know. I've worked a number of different jobs, but there was nothing like that. So it felt pretty cool to be able to see behind the curtain for a lot of the brands that a lot of us shop from today online.
And just before we jump off this topic, did you ever get to talk to the same people twice when you were in general support? Because I often wonder, if you had a really good conversation with somebody and you went onto their store 6 months later, did you ever meet them again by coincidence through the general support area?
You know what? That was one of the most challenging parts about that role, is that basically once the call ends, that's it. So there would maybe be 1 or 2 out of every 200 people I would speak to that might pop up again. But there were certain conversations and certain connections that I would form with people on that initial call that I would kind of flag and just, see what progress they're making over time. But no, I mean, it very much is just kind of like a one and done.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the challenging part about it. And, the next time they call, I think, again, the consistency across Shopify support when I was there was the fact that every time they call, they're going to get somebody different. They're going to get a different perspective. They're going to get different nuance. So it's almost like we were acting like not just support solutions, but almost like consultants, right? You could call 5 times in one day and you're going to get different answers, different approaches to everything. And I think that usually costs a lot of money to hire a consultant to give you that sort of insight. So it was really cool to see the way that they hired people from all different backgrounds in order to be able to, deliver that experience. So unfortunately, it was very rare that I would speak to the same person twice.
Thanks for that. It's a great insight. The last time I was in Toronto was for one of the Unite events. I think it was either 2019 or 2020. And I remember walking around for 10 or 15 minutes before I realized that the shopping centres were actually under my feet, under the pavement. How is the city doing? Because when I was there, I just remember cranes everywhere building apartments and everything was on Airbnb. Has that changed?
Well, I will say, there's usually 2 seasons that we consider in Toronto. There's winter and construction. So that has not changed. So a lot of construction. I don't understand what we're still building. There's so many buildings, but it seems like there's a new condo going up every single day. But, I would say post-pandemic, a lot has changed in Toronto. And I think that, it's changed the way a lot of people interact with each other. It's changed the way a lot of people interact with the city itself. But I don't know. For me, I've been here now for 13, going on 14 years, and I still can find new ways to appreciate it, especially traveling a lot. There's always this idea of like, oh, do I really want to live in Toronto? But all it takes is me leaving to come back to really be like, all right, I'm back, know?
And I've heard great things, and similar to what you've just mentioned there. Is it expensive? It was when I was there. I'm assuming that like the rest of the developed world has become more expensive post-pandemic.
Well, that's just it. When I moved here 14 years ago, I was living in a house with 2 people, and I think I was paying maybe, I don't know, the total rent for that house was like $1,300, I think, per month. Now it's like a 1-bedroom condo is about $2,500. So just like everything, it's skyrocketed. But that goes to say that everything outside of Toronto as well, there really isn't anywhere that you can go unless you want to live in a cabin in the woods where you're saving money. But I think the idea of once the pandemic happened, being able to do things from home, not necessarily needing to go into an office and all of that, people now value that outside space. People want the backyard. People want to be able to, step right out of their front door rather than live stacked on top of people. So the value of property, I feel, is, sure, it's expensive in the city, but it's even more expensive now outside of the city. So you really, you can't get away from it if you try.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated where people are living and where they're from, hence the question on Toronto. But let's talk about Rebuy. For the listeners who don't know what it is, explain to them why a lot of Shopify agencies are putting Rebuy into their stores. So just give us a summary of exactly what Rebuy does.
Yeah, well, if you think about traditionally when you're building a store on Shopify, you're limited to the way that those blocks are plugged into your product. So, I always use the example of, imagine walking into a shoe store and that sales associate is holding up one shoe and they're hoping it fits anybody that walks in. That might work. But what Rebuy is able to do differently is personalize that experience based on a number of different factors. So, our AI engine can take into consideration your entire store's order history. We can take into consideration geolocation. So a number of different ways that we can take the exact same on-site experience, the same blocks within the theme, and serve up different products based on purchase behavior. So essentially what it does is it personalizes the experience beyond just calling somebody by their name. It takes it a step further and almost becomes intuitive based on what customers are organically looking at. So it helps to increase conversions. We basically optimize your site to sell simply because we're not suggesting the same things to everybody, right? If you've got people that you're selling to in LA versus Sweden, they're probably not looking for the same things, but you don't have to have 8 different websites to sell to these people. You can simply plug in logic that allows you to personalize the recommendations using those identifiers. So yeah, ultimately what it does is it just makes the shopping experience smarter and more effective when it comes to, guiding the customer through the discovery process.
One of the features that I love, which is probably the default feature for most people that add the app, is the smart cart, which effectively takes over the slide out cart if there's a slide out cart in your store. And creates that AI-driven upsell automatically to the customer. Can you explain to users how powerful that is?
100%. I mean, if we think about also the fact that most shoppers are shopping from mobile, without a cart that is doing more than just sliding out, there's a lot of wasted real estate there. And I think that if we think about trying to replicate the experience of shopping in person, essentially you take a cart that is just allowing you to collect things and then check out. It turns it almost into like an online sales associate, right? So there's a number of different features that we can use to gamify the process. So if you've got a free shipping threshold, we can make that interactive to show how far you are away, to almost encourage the customer to purchase more. But without something like the smart cart, typically what merchants would have to rely on is somebody to hard code, specific elements or specific components in the cart. But that might not work all year round. And this offers like a low to no code solution to be able to create something that's a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more interactive for the customer. So, without the smart cart, typically you'll have that experience where it slides out, which is great. But what more can it do? So that was kind of one of Rebuy's hero products. And we've now taken that and turned it into something that can actually guide the customer purchase process. So, for example, you add something into the cart, you can then set up logic that will suggest products right in that cart based on what's being added. So much like when you go into a store and somebody sees that you're shopping for, this t-shirt, they're probably going to recommend things that based on what you're looking at will go with, what organically you came in there to look for. So it basically turns it into more of a tool, it makes it a little bit more powerful than just, a cart that slides out. Like at this point, a flashy website isn't enough anymore. That's kind of like the standard. You have to set yourself apart in an ecosystem where there are 100 brands selling the same products as you. The experience that you provide is ultimately what's going to set you apart. Yeah. And a smart cart really allows you to tailor that experience based on whatever you want it to do, essentially.
There's nearly an expectation by some consumers that by the time they get to the next step when they press add to cart, that the system will actually recommend. Like if you're in a music store and there's 15 or 20 or 30,000 SKUs and you put in, How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb by U2, there's nearly an expectation by customers now that a recommendation around U2, could be a t-shirt or another piece of merch, should come up to nearly save them from actually having to search. It's nearly feeding, I suppose, human laziness in one way, but at the same time, it's increasing average order value and it's also speeding up the checkout process.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, I mean, we're in such an instant, kind of like an instant gratification culture. Everything is so quick. We're on TikTok, we're scrolling, bop, 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 bop. You only have so much time to capture the attention of a buyer. And, at that point, if they have to think too hard about purchasing online, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I'm a very impulsive online shopper, but if anything takes me out of that flow, immediately I will bounce off and forget about it, So you only have so much time to capture that attention. So starting right from the homepage, you got to personalize that experience. And once the customer starts engaging, how are you keeping them on site? And I think that, again, the more you can guide that purchase process, the more likely they are to stay on site. And the more you can recommend products that go along with what they're looking for, the more likely they are to purchase more products. So it's the closest thing that you can get to having people in a store that are kind of eyeing what you're looking at and getting ready to suggest the next thing. So I mean, it's a pretty powerful tool. And, as we continue to iterate, the ways in which I've seen merchants teach me how they're leveraging it, it's incredible. Yeah. Like the limits, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did you even know? You don't even work here. I didn't even know that we could do that. So it's really cool the way that people have been flexing the tool.
I think you've built a platform more so than just, I think the word app is, in the old days, every Shopify extension was an app. But I look now at a lot of the former apps that are now multifunctional. I see them as a mini platform. Like, for example, explain to the users how your reordering solution works.
Yeah. So again, if we already know that a customer has purchased products from you, there's a number of different ways that you can re-engage with that customer. And I think that, being able to personalize upsells on a page where your customer is coming back, chances are, like, if they're going to come back to your website, they're going to come back to purchase the thing that got them bought into your brand in the first place. So rather than making them go through the entire purchase process, select this collection, go to this product page, add to cart, we can incorporate reorder landing pages. So curated landing pages that are, again, going to make it that much easier to go from, the page to checkout in a number of less clicks, essentially. But while they're on that reorder landing page, we're able to serve up other products to say, hey, you're back to purchase this. If you like this, you're probably going to love this as well. And those won't be the same recommendations for every single customer. We set up logic that allows you to upsell the right products to the right people based on what they naturally were already looking for. So, the effectiveness in that is that, again, you get the trust of the customer. When you do suggest something, they buy it, they use it, they love it. I think everybody always wants to default to, how can I get more clients subscribing or more customers subscribing to my product? Subscribe and save, subscribe and save. Well, first you got to buy the trust from them. So, one of the features within the smart cart, buy more, save more, it's like, how can we at least get a number of different products into their hands and make it so normal for them to incorporate those products into their day-to-day that it just makes sense for them, right? So when we get to that reordering process, they come back to purchase, let's say, even just one of those products, we can then encourage a subscription to say, hey, save 15% and we'll just ship this to you every month. We'll take the purchase process out of it for you. So yeah, I don't know. I think that consumers are becoming much more smart, and the pandemic really did have a play in that, right? Now you can get groceries brought to your house. You can get, movie theater popcorn brought to your house.
Yeah.
The kids were learning at school from home. So we've become accustomed to this convenience kind of mentality. And I think, if we think about Amazon Prime, it's like people want it and they want it right now. So it's like the experience that you provide ultimately is what's going to get people bought in. And that goes not just from the on-site experience, but the unboxing, your customer support, your return policies, all of that. So it's now a much bigger picture when it comes to personalization and, speaking to your customer rather than selling at them.
Yeah, you touched at the start there about AI and personalization. The Shopify search and discovery app, coupled with recommendations, it seems to have improved a lot over the last 6 months. Like historically, the you may also like section under a product was actually just any product in the collection. Okay.
Yeah.
Now it seems to have improved, and they've obviously invested a lot of time in it. But you have your own personalization facility. You can place a personalized collection on a homepage using Rebuy, can't you?
100%. I mean, the nice part about Rebuy is that we're not just limited to, specific products or specific collections. We can use things, again, like geolocation. How many times have they purchased before? So like a new customer, for example, might want to see top sellers. A returning customer might want to see what's new. So you can take that traditionally static collection section and program it with a number of different rules based on different customer segments or, qualifiers essentially, so that every time the customer comes, they don't have to go through your navigation menu or, you click a back arrow. The site almost serves to them what they want before they even know that they want it.
Yeah. And just on that, Rich, as well, that is ultra important when it comes to mobile. The real estate that you have for the eye line of the user is very, very small. So the minute they see something that's actually relevant, well, then your chances of converting that customer to a sale are increased.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing. So it's like, Rebuy is powerful, but it's also not the solution where it's just like, okay, let me put 100 widgets on every single page and hope for the best. That's not it. The process of using a complex platform like Rebuy is to simplify the process for the customer. So it's like, it's very strategic. It goes right back into like merchandising. The same way it's so important how stores in person visually merchandise their products to get you to want to go up to them and buy them. You have to keep those things in mind. So, I was on the merchant facing side for almost 2 years. I'm now on the agency partner side, but getting to work with merchants and speak to them, not just about Rebuy's capabilities, but also their entire store's experience. It's like, okay, well, have you thought about maybe putting your recommendations above your reviews section that's taking up so much space, especially on mobile? How many swipes do you think a customer is going to do before they bounce off that page? So it's about being strategic, but leveraging tools that ultimately can complement what it is you're trying to accomplish. So yeah, I find it very satisfying because a lot of brands, they're so zoomed in to what they've been doing that I don't mind being a little bit disruptive and a little bit challenging and saying, listen, we can do that. But first, let's think about reordering this or maybe switching up the copy. And all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, is this Rebuy on the phone? I'm like, yes, but Rebuy is only going to be as effective as your overall site experience. So, the amount of time and effort that you put into crafting this curated, beautiful online store, we want to make sure that it's done right and not just based on what you like. I think that a lot of times the bias of certain merchants, their own, well, this is what I like. I think this looks great. It's not about that. What problem are you solving for customers? What is the issue that you're trying to accomplish with Rebuy in the first place? And let me help you get there. So yeah, there's a lot of different lenses that you have to consider when you're implementing anything onto your online store. But yeah, I'm still fascinated by it, truly.
Look, that's great advice. What's your favorite feature of Rebuy that you haven't mentioned?
So the way that Rebuy works is basically we have what are referred to as widgets. So the same way that you would implement a section or a block into your theme, all of our features are referred to as widgets. And those widgets are powered by what we refer to as data sources, or otherwise the brain. So that brain is what determines what products are being displayed. We actually just came out with an endpoint that actually can tap into your Klaviyo segments. So for something like post-purchase, if you've got a number of different Klaviyo segments, whether it's, VIP customer, first-time buyer, whatever that is, we can now curate that experience in terms of what we're serving up based on that. So I would say the thing that's most exciting to me is all of the integrations that we have that play well with each other. So things like Klaviyo, your reviews apps, your subscription apps, all of those things tap right into it. So, when we're thinking of an omni-channel experience, right outside of the online store into your email marketing, Rebuy can integrate into those. If you're using TapCart, if you've got a mobile app, Rebuy can power those recommendations within the app. So for me, I think my favorite feature is the fact that not just on-site personalization, but we're able to tap in and curate those recommendations off-site as well.
You kind of answered my next question, because I was going to talk to you about Klaviyo integrations. It's a staple, isn't it? I mean, if you're an app developer in the Shopify ecosystem, there's no point in having an app in the Shopify ecosystem if you can't in any way integrate to Klaviyo.
100%. And I think, we're right in the Super Bowl season of selling, right? We're right upon BFCM, holiday, all of that. I think right now, so many people are focused on how can I convert? How can I convert? How can I convert? For me, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's optimize to convert, but also how are you going to retain those customers? So setting up a plan in place now and leveraging things like Klaviyo to set up these retention flows and things like that. Leverage the tools that you have, lean into your app partners. There's so many resources that we have that I get it. You don't want to have a call with every single app integration that you're working with. But I think if you're going to spend the time to create an online store that converts, let's think of, not just for today, but let's build for tomorrow as well. So those integrations help Rebuy customers basically see beyond just what they're looking to do today. We can also then have conversations about, next month, next quarter, and start to speak to those things as well. So it's nice to be able to solve for right now, but also be able to suggest for things that they should be looking out for in the future.
Yeah, Black Friday is November 29th. So the data, that's going to be collected by stores, actually right through November, December, it's the most important data collected in the calendar year for any store. So to your point, if you do have apps and integrations that are live, just make sure they're working properly, because if they're not collecting data, they're completely wasted, which means basically that you could eventually lose future sales. Is there any particular customer or, showcase client that you guys have had that you'd like to share with the audience?
I always go back to this example because there's two examples actually that I'll mention. So, I'll give them the spotlight. So there's a company called IMI. We actually have a case study on our case studies page. The way in which that they have gone to market online, their entire online store is so stunning to look at. Like you want to know more about these products. So they've created a customer flow that really does make it easy for the customer, to discover the products that they sell and also make them want to buy more. So they've done a really great job at not interrupting the purchase process, not inundating you with suggestions and pop-ups and whatever, but they really kind of guide you and basically it almost seems like you're interacting with someone in person. So right from their homepage all the way to post-purchase, they've done a really great job at, again, like I said, speaking to the customer versus selling at the customer. And I think that if I had to highlight, it would be too hard for me to highlight all the ones that I want to, but there's a number of people that have done this really, really well. And I think that, again, when we get into BFCM and we think about optimizing and all of that, there are some online stores that I've been to and you go and immediately it's like, sign up and save, support chat box popping up. It's like, holy crap, that's a lot, especially if you're on a mobile phone,
yes,
right? Yeah. So when we get into BFCM, take off that subscribe and save. You're already offering a promo. Get rid of all of your pop-ups, make your hero product stand out and let them discover that product, add it to cart and check out in 3 clicks. So yeah, they're one example. And, to your point again about us not being an app, but more of a platform, especially now, you're relying on so many things to, move the needle on what it is that you're looking to accomplish. And I think what we've been able to identify is where are merchants going and what solutions do they need? Shopify does a really great job, but they have to iterate and build a product that works for the majority of people. So there are these nuanced use cases where, a merchant needs a little bit more than what Shopify offers out of the box. So Rebuy steps in to be able to identify those pain points and create a platform that aggregates bundles, pop-up solutions, upsells, subscriptions, a number of different things, so that again, you only have to go to one place to analyze that data. It's all in one spot, but also you don't have to log into a bunch of different apps to manage all of these things. You get a full picture of exactly where your site's performing. And because of the data that we're able to provide, you can see where people are adding products into the cart. So which of your widgets is best performing? Is it the homepage? Well, we can tell you that.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of data that we've overlooked for the longest time that we've had to kind of almost interpret using things like Hotjar and heat maps and all of this. Rebuy is able to tell you where are they adding the product in during the purchase process? What are they searching for the most? And this can give you insight into your overall strategy, right? So it's like if you have 800 people searching for the same product, well, maybe that's an inclination to move that product to the homepage, make it easier to discover so they don't have to look for it. So yeah, there's a bunch of brands that have kind of tapped into this and done it really, really well. And ultimately, those are the brands I shop for. Like I said, there's a number of brands that I can buy a t-shirt from, but it's the experience that I go back for. I don't want to have to click and exit a pop-up and log in to be able to check out. Make it as easy as possible to take my money and you'll get my money.
We have one client, they have the Rebuy Smart Cart and they have the free shipping bar on top, the products in the cart underneath, and then they have a subscription upsell and they have recommendations underneath. And it's actually not that cluttered, but it's the most powerful single view that a customer can see and that a shop owner can build. It does genuinely amaze me how clever you guys have done it. For us, the results that customers see are fantastic. So, Rich, we haven't met in person yet, but I like your style and I love the product and it was an absolute pleasure to have you today. So thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great chatting with you.
Thanks for listening. All of our episodes are available on Apple, Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. If you're an e-commerce professional with an exciting story to tell, reach out to the team on hello@milkbottlelabs.com. Until the next time, take care.